Can your investments have a positive impact on the world? At Standard Chartered, we believe money can be a force for good. Through your sustainable investments with us, we're financing hospitals that are the heartbeat of local communities, funding clean energy to make electricity more accessible, and investing in innovative solutions to clean polluted marine habitats. Sustainable investments that benefit you and parts of the world that need it most. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.
Thank you, everyone, for joining our panel session on key features in renewables in Middle East and North Africa. Globally, the current renewable capacity of 2,800 gigawatts would need to increase 10 times to 28,000 gigawatts to meet the Paris Accord. What this implies is 90% of the total capacity by 2050 should be renewables. This is primarily going to be driven by solar as well as wind, which by 2050 should constitute 74% of the total renewables. In Middle East and North Africa, currently, if you look at 2020, total renewable capacity of 28,000 megawatts represents only 1% of the global renewable capacity. Having said that, the last 2 years, we've seen an implosion of renewable projects in the region. Current forecast by 2025, the region needs 40,000 megawatts and about 100,000 megawatts planned as we speak today. What this implies is $25 to $30 billion of investment in just pure renewables over the next 5 years. Having said that, the region has all the key ingredients for renewable projects in the region. Number one, availability of land. Number two, no shortage of sun, high wind speeds in certain geographies. Number three, low capital costs, the right infrastructure, as well as low labor costs. And lastly, and very, very importantly from a bank's perspective, a very, very good track record of structuring limited recourse financing and ample liquidity. Today in our panel, we have Mr. Rajat Nanda. He is the acting Chief Investment Officer as well as the Chief Portfolio Officer of Aqua Power. Aqua has approximately 45,000 megawatts in operation, construction, and advanced developments over approximately 65 projects, both power and desal, as well as a very, very large and increasing renewable portfolio. Just in MENA itself, more than 6,000 megawatts currently as we speak. We also have on our panel Sarmad Lone. Sarmad is the coverage banking head for AME. He's been with the bank since 2013, and previously he's held senior positions with Morgan Stanley, Citibank, and CBQ as well. We also have Francois Dao. He is a vice president with EDF Renewables, been based in Dubai for the last 20 years. EDF Renewables is a global player in renewables with more than 13,000 megawatts of capacity globally. And importantly, in the region, they recently closed one of the world's largest solar project in Abu Dhabi. They have a 800 megawatt project in Dubai, as well as a wind project in Saudi. We also have Agnieszka Klisz. Agnieszka is a partner of Covington, focusing on energy, infrastructure, and renewables. We've been working very closely with her, and she's been leading her team on some key deals in Dubai, as well as Oman and Saudi Arabia as well. So starting off, if I could just start off with Rajat. Rajat, last couple of months, we've seen a lot of media on a couple of your projects. So there, 1,500 megawatts, as well as Al Fasilia, 600 megawatts, PPAs executed. The tariffs in the region, we are now seeing your projects. If we look at your projects, Dubai, for a period of 6 years, the 5.8 cents has gone to 1.69 cents. Saudi Arabia, very similarly, we've seen the tariffs for Sakaka from 2.34 going down to a range of 1.04 to 1.239, the 1.04 being another world record. So one thing which really pops up is, number one, is this the floor? And what distinguishes this region that we constantly see these world-breaking tariffs all across every 6 months, every year? There was a world record just 6 months back, which EDF created. Prior to that, obviously, you had another world record, and now we're seeing tariffs at 1.04. So in your view, what distinguishes this region? What are the key features? Is this a floor? I know it's not very easy to predict. And with such massive demand coming up for solar, to meet the Paris Accord, we globally need 850 gigawatts of solar and wind a year, which is almost 3 times as much as we had last year. So just your thoughts would be appreciated on the tariffs in particular.
Yeah, thank you,
Rajat,
Abbas.
yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Abbas. First of all, for Standard Chartered to give me the opportunity to be in this panel. Also, thanks to my fellow panelists for accepting me to be in this panel. And most importantly, thanks to all the viewers for taking time out to attend this event. In terms of your question, Abbas, on how do you see the long-term sustainability of the tariffs, have we reached the bottom, or is it going to get sharper than what we have seen in recent times, or are we going to see a U-shaped or a V-shaped kind of a trend, as most of the economists talk about economics, trying to draw the parallel here with tariffs? I'd like to answer this question very simply across two buckets. First, the macro, and second is the micro. In terms of the macro level analysis that underpins the trend of tariffs that we have seen, especially in this region, I'd like to say that this region is very unique. Is very unique in the sense that it has great solar resources. The procurement programs are of mega sizes, and when you have mega size procurement, that brings in the economies of scale, which passes on to the tariff competitiveness. The governments, which are basically your contracting entities, are highly rated, and the projects in itself are very well structured. Most of the pre-development work is done by the governments. If you compare it to the markets of Asia or Africa, for that matter, the pre-development work is done by the government. So when they bring these projects to the market and put it into the competitive bidding framework, a lot of these early development costs, which can flow in and make your tariff more expensive than what we see here, is actually being shouldered and already taken into consideration by the government. On top of that, we have low tax loads, we have virtually no foreign exchange risks, and very low cost of capital. Of course, the cost of capital is a consequence to the higher off-taker credit quality and the high quality of the concessional framework and the demonstrated track records that we have seen in this market. So these are the macro circumstances that basically lead to all of the input costs being fairly optimized and being very competitive. On top of that, if I were to graduate to the second bucket, which is much more specific for how the developers structure the transactions, the relative differences in tariffs between what Aqua Power is doing and our competitors are doing is a function of the innovation and optimization at the margin. It's a function of the specific circumstances at the time of the bid also, the specific combination of how commodity markets are prevalent at a given point of time, how interest rates are prevalent at a given, the benchmark interest rates are prevalent at a given point of time, how the logistic transportation costs are at a given point of time, and so on and so forth. So if you put together the level of innovation, the level of optimization that different developers are able to bring together at any given point of time, and you put it together with the macro environment under which the Middle East puts a nice framework in front of you, what we get is a very competitive tariff out there. Now, answering your last question, how do I see the trend line going forward? I personally don't think that in the very short term we will see a 1 cent tariff being a order of the day. What has happened in the last bid of Shoiba, which was publicly declared in March, the Shoiba or the Al Faisalia 600 megawatt, where Aqua Power's tariff was 1.04 cents, levelized tariff over 25 years. It will be hard to beat that tariff in the short term. But what I do see that as technology evolves rapidly and as automation and digitization is further increasing and getting prevalent, the efficiency and the life cycle improvement will lead to the cost reaching the 1 cent threshold. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rajat. Just one follow-on question. What do you feel is the greatest challenge for developers to achieve the 40 gigawatt over the next 4-5 years?
I think the greatest challenge is regulation and essentially the amount of government intervention in preparing the foundations for the developers to come in and implement these projects. I think capital, there is plenty of it. Capacity in terms of the raw materials and in terms of, let us say, the OEM supply, there is either plenty of it, but as the demand goes up, we all know that the supply will keep pace with the demand. But what we need to see is that the procurer putting together the right regulatory framework and doing all the preparatory work in terms of getting the land issues sorted out, the early permitting sorted out, so that the developers can come in and start moving at a very rapid pace to be able to implement all these projects.
Thanks a lot. Francois, the entire region has set very, very ambitious targets for achieving renewables. If you look at Saudi Arabia, almost 59,000 megawatts by 2030. If you look at UAE, 50% by 2050. Dubai itself is targeting 75%. Egypt, Morocco, similar 40 to 50% targets. EDF has been very, very successful, not only in solar, but also in wind. What is EDF's strategy in the region? And in particular, where do you see opportunities on the wind sector?
Okay, thank you very much for, again, inviting me to this forum. We, EDF Renewables, are, of course, no need to repeat it, but we were fully committed to the energy transition, meaning that renewable energies and all technologies of renewable energies are part of our DNA and are part of the solutions that we are deploying in this region. Yes, you're right. We have seen, actually, in the last 5 years, already an exceptional growth. If you just take the GCC countries, we are talking about raising from 500 megawatt in 2018 to something like 11,000 megawatt in 2023 with projects under construction and operation right now. Yes, we are facing something like doubling the capacity every single year for the last 3 years and then the next coming 2 years. So yes, our commitment is definitely to be actively part of it. Now the wind, yes, we are building right now the first and the largest wind project in the Middle East, in Dubai Jandal in Saudi Arabia. Of course, there have been challenges because it just falls under the COVID-19 sanitary crisis, but it will be put in operation in the coming days or week we are talking about here. There are potential resources, large resources in Saudi Arabia. There are also in Oman. And of course, the North Africa, Morocco, where we are building 100 megawatt, and we used to operate the first wind project in the Africa continent, and of course Tunisia, and why not, and maybe Algeria in the short term. In every of these projects, in every of these countries, we are present. We are committed to support this expansion, and we are prepared to the acceleration. And I think you mentioned about earlier, is the right term. Acceleration is needed to meet the target. Let's not talk about 2050. Let's talk about medium term, 2030. 2030 is tomorrow. 2030, when we look at the plan in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, we have to triple, or more than triple what we are doing right now. Yes, and and my friend Rajit, of course, mentioned it earlier. There are large companies. There will be others. We will see. We are very happy to see all these involvement or these engagement of these companies. And yes, we will be present with our teams and competing each other to deliver this. But there's no choice. We need all together to meet the target.
Thanks a lot, Francois. If I could just ask you, you just closed one of the world's largest solar project just 6 months back in Abu Dhabi, equivalent of getting rid of 470,000 cars, equivalent of emissions. Can I just ask you, in terms of challenges, what was your biggest challenge? The financing was a different structure, but from a development perspective, what was the biggest challenge in closing a 2,000 megawatt solar project in the region?
Well, challenges is part of my time every day, every hour. You can imagine building the first wind project in Saudi is a challenge. Now, building the largest PV plant in, of course, a very short time, meeting these deadlines, there are challenges. We have selected a CIMEC, a Chinese contractor, new in the region. Yes, there are challenges. Fortunately, EDF Renewables and EDF in general, we are engineers, a lot of engineers, and this is part of our DNA. So building projects, deploying all the innovations that we have imagined, design, engineer at bidding stage is part of our DNA. And then following up closely the construction with the EPC contractor are challenges. And then on top of it, what we have been seeing in the last couple of months is the pressure on the PV modules. I think that around this forum, a lot of people are facing it. Yes, there are challenges that we are to tackle now, and we have to tackle in coming weeks. I don't see actually in every aspect or every part of the project where there are no challenges. But you're right, we need to meet all of them. There's nothing in all these projects to go to bid and to win at very competitive pricing. You need to, sorry to say this, I don't want to be misunderstood. Everything must be perfect at the time we design it, at the time we bid for it. Then this perfection needs to be deployed, and there's no choice. Yes, there are a lot of people involved in this. We have engineers, we have financiers, of course, but a lot of engineers on the project to make it happen and to meet the target.
Thanks a lot, Francois.
Of course, fortunately, financing was okay with you guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Agnieszka, there's a great push amongst the banking community to finance renewable projects in terms of pricing benefits, capital relief. Just wondering, how are legal firms pursuing renewable transactions globally as well as in the region? Do you look at it slightly differently from a conventional project financing, or is it the same bucket?
So, we as lawyers have very specific tasks. Those are to support our clients, first and foremost, and while doing so, we need to make sure that we fit within that regulatory framework that Rajit was referring to, which is ever-changing. So yes, we have to support the low tariff as well. So how do we fit into this? We need to be flexible. We need to be flexible on how our fee structures are arranged. That's the most obvious way that we can support the teams. That's the most obvious way. The flexibility to do this is obviously important to ensure that we can continue working on these projects. But, like everyone, we have fixed costs, and we need to ensure that that those are, basically taken care of. So we work with the teams that we support very closely to ensure that we deliver what is required, meaning we work with the finance team, we work with the business development team, and we work with, obviously, the lenders to ensure that what is done efficiently. We benefit from the fact that there are many projects that are being done in a particular manner. They are similar, but that can be deceiving, so we have to be able to recognize the differences. But the key for us is to be flexible on fees and flexible in terms of being able to recognize the push to develop many projects and ensuring that they are successfully closed. So we need to be mobilized, flexible, and that's what we recognize. And I think law firms generally recognize that that's what needs to be done to support. But these projects are not hugely different from other projects. But that flexibility, I think, is key.
Thanks, Agnieszka. Sarma, Standard Chartered Bank has been fairly active in the renewable front in the region as far as project financing is concerned in particular. What role is SCB playing, and what is our policy statement as far as renewables is concerned?
Thank you, Abbas. A couple of things. First of all, for SCB, net zero and sustainable finance is a key pillar of our strategy. Renewables fits into the heart of the strategy from an approach perspective, from its impact perspective, and how it can impact the strategy and help the world. A couple of data points I'll pick out. One is between January 2020 and end of this year, we would have completed about 10 power deals across the region. Out of these 10 power deals, 8 will be renewable deals. SCB as a bank has also publicly stated that by the end of 2024, we will be supporting renewable projects up to $35 billion, which is a big commitment. And honestly, internally, our objective is to beat that commitment and do much more. And the way the market is going, honestly, my view is we should be easily able to beat that. As you know, Francois mentioned, we were delighted and honored to be part of the EDF project in Abu Dhabi, which is the largest single project on PV project in Abu Dhabi. We are also working on 3 very large projects in Saudi Arabia, which hopefully get completed over the next 6-9 months, with bringing on total capacity of 2,300 megawatt. But more importantly, I'm honestly inspired in terms of what's going on in countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE in particular, but the trend is quite pervasive across the entire Gulf MENA region and even beyond the Gulf MENA region. You look at some of the targets which have been put out by countries like Saudi Arabia in terms of hitting 27 gigawatt target by 2023, 58 gigawatt by 2030, these are impressive. And honestly, as Francois mentioned, their track record in terms of rolling them out, implementing with support of names like Aqua, names like EDF, and many other partners is impressive. So it is highly likely they should be able to hit that. And that's an inspiration, I think, for the entire world and certainly for the region and beyond. You touched, Abbas, in your opening comments, some of the ambitious targets announced by UAE as well in terms of 50% contribution from renewable. by 2050, that again is something which goes on smack into the heart of supporting this strategy. So I would say this is existential for banks, active in infrastructure globally, and especially in this part of the world.
Thanks a lot, Sarmad. Rajat, a lot of recent press on hydrogen. Currently, we're looking at forecasts that hydrogen would utilize probably from currently 4% of the energy requirements to 6 times the multiple, 24% by 2050. Aqua has signed a MOU with Air Products and NEOM to develop a massive multi-billion-dollar green hydrogen project, 650 tons of hydrogen a day. My question is, how is Aqua balancing the first mover advantage, which it clearly seems to be targeting, vis-a-vis economic viability, given the fact that production costs can come down significantly, as well as technology scale up, and any views on bankability, because this would be the first project of its kind, and we're looking at several $1 billion. Sorry, Rajat, can't hear you. You might be on mute. I think you might be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm just not good in unmuting myself, as you can see, but okay. Thanks for the question, Abbas. The NEOM Green Hydrogen Project has indeed been officially announced as a joint venture between the city of NEOM, Air Products, and Aqua Power, covering a production of up to 1.2 million tons of green ammonia per year, ammonia here being the vector of transportation, and with a confirmed offtake from Air Products for the full capacity. The project is progressing on a fast-track basis in order to be in a position to reach commercial operation production by the year 2025 and start delivering to the international market through this offtake agreement with Air Products. The hydrogen there is likely to be used or is more certainly to be used for the mobility sector globally. The target market for green hydrogen applications requiring to decarbonize the energy consumption or associated industrial applications is to be seen as a replacement for grey hydrogen in current existing applications for hydrogen. But the biggest opportunity lies in other applications where hydrogen is not present, but represents the only opportunity to decarbonize, including where direct electrification is not economically or technically feasible. By 2050, in terms of a number of think tanks forecast, a minimum of 20% of the total primary energy consumption is projected to be based on zero carbon hydrogen. Now, while blue hydrogen may be a more price competitive alternative today, it is to be noted that it is not a zero carbon solution. It has only a low carbon out there. And our view is that the necessary investments to bring blue hydrogen to scale would be greatly outpaced by the development of renewable based green hydrogen, which costs are expected to dramatically fall in the coming decade. Now, Aqua Power is taking a very strategic position on the green hydrogen, as over 70% of the cost of green hydrogen today is driven by the cost of electricity, and ensuring that we have a supply of renewable electricity which is super competitive and which Aqua Power as a company has been able to demonstrate through its track record over the last years. We are of the view that we will be able to contribute towards the lowering of the cost curve of green hydrogen. Our view is that green hydrogen is pretty much today at the same spot where the cost of generating renewable electricity used to be, let's say, 5-6 years back. And since then, we have seen in the world of renewable energy 80 to 90% reduction of the final cost of production of renewable electricity. I think in the next few years, green hydrogen will evolve towards that, and we hope to be able to contribute towards both the lowering of the cost curve and also towards the accelerated deployment of the green hydrogen. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajat. Sarma, the green hydrogen, clearly one sector which we will be tracking very closely. It's very exciting, and hopefully Standard Chartered Bank can play a key role in this sector. The other sector which recently has come up in this part of the world is waste to energy. We've now seen a couple of transactions being structured on a limited recourse basis, including $1 billion project which has just recently closed. Just wanted to get your perspective of what SCB is doing in this particular sector and what are the forthcoming opportunities in waste to energy.
Thank you, Abbas. If I put it candidly, I think there are some painful facts and there's some fantastic facts. Painful, historical, good, constructive, forward-looking. If you look at the region, we produce roughly around 150 metric tons per annum of waste. Only 5% of this, as of today, is recycled. Bulk of it ends up into landfills or in the desert, which clearly is depressing. But what I would say is that a couple of things. If you equate this to, on a per day basis, this equates to 2 kg per day in comparison to Western Europe, where it is 1.2 kg per day. So roughly the level of efficiency in terms of waste production is, on a worst basis, double of what Western Europe is doing. There are good things. We are involved in a number of projects on the waste to energy side, one being Dubai waste to energy, the Sharjah waste to energy. In the case of Dubai, one project, once completed over the next couple of years, will address 60 to 70% of the Dubai waste, which is quite good. My view is that the adaptation in terms of waste management, waste processing is going to be quite pervasive across the region. We see a lot of initiatives and prioritization in the UAE, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and Saudi. My view is, based on some of the discussions we are having with our clients, that some of the other MENA countries are also very actively, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Jordan, are very actively looking at projects on the waste to energy side, and will be adapting and moving very quickly along the line.
Thanks, Armad. Rajat, just wanted to get your perspective. We did come across Aqua's name as one of the potential bidders for Abu Dhabi, and very recently saw an announcement in Saudi Arabia as well that they're targeting 3,000 megawatts from waste to energy. How is Aqua looking at this sector, and what opportunities are you tracking? Rajat, sorry, you're on mute.
Seem not to be cognizant of my mute button. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Look, in terms of the waste sector, Abbas, what I wanted to say is Aqua Power does not come with the traditional expertise or experience of the pure waste sector. But when it comes to waste to energy, eventually waste is just a feedstock towards the steam cycle, which we do for a living day in and day out. So therefore our interest in the waste to energy sector is quite high, and obviously any waste to energy opportunities that come in our core markets, in our target markets, is something that we will pursue with great interest. We will obviously have to form partnerships and joint ventures where we are able to pool in our local and complex project structuring experience with companies that traditionally come from the waste sector to be able to build formidable consortiums that can compete again to deliver value to our procurers and customers. The Abu Dhabi one is of great interest to us. But more interestingly, Saudi has also under Vision 2030 clearly sent a message that they will be adapting the waste to energy as an important part of the energy transition that Saudi is embracing. And we obviously want to continue to keep learning the business and position ourselves to capture as much as we can these opportunities when they come up in the context of Saudi as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Rajat. Francois, this part of the world is well renowned for massive mega projects, your project being one of them. Aqua developed a $4 billion renewable project. Interestingly, you have a tie-up, EDF has a tie-up with Masdar on small scale projects. Just if you could give a perspective, what are these small scale projects and what is the progress so far?
Okay, actually, I don't have MS talking about small because there's no small project in energy transition for sure. Yes, we believe that to make it sustainable, we should address also the need from a different angle. These projects actually is not only to produce green electricity, but also to produce green electricity as per a certain demand. And it's quite innovation. That means that and I give you an example, of course, this one is not in MENA region, but it's in South Africa recently. There was a tender of projects at much less size, but to meet a demand between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. for all kinds of energies, including renewables. So that is the challenge and the innovation which are required that we believe is the next step, is what we need to build with wind, combining wind, PV, battery, and all kinds of storage facilities in order to meet the demand. It's hybrid solutions. And of course, being EDF Renewables, we are in all these technologies give us quite great tools in order to meet this demand. Now, you're right, with this joint venture with Mazda is a tool, is a way to progress. We are looking at UAE, but of course at Saudi Arabia, and as Rajat mentioned earlier about regulations. I think we are not alone. There are several of large developers wishing to meet the demand, but we need to wait, and we are facing some delay in the regulation to allow us to optimize or to give the optimum solution for this particular need of smaller plants, smaller facilities, but targeting or meeting a very particular demand which far beyond what we see in our plants, meaning PV plant, meaning 8 a.m., 5 p.m. So this is what we are looking at, and this is where our teams are working on.
Thanks, Francois. Agnieszka, clearly a lot of activity in Saudi. We just touched upon green hydrogen, renewables, clearly 58,000 megawatts in the next 8 years. We also touched upon waste to energy. Saudi Arabia just enacted a new PPP law to encourage investment and to promote transparency. Any thoughts on the bankability and an update on the new PPP law?
Sure. So the new law is a part of the Vision 2030. So it's something that I think we expected. We've been waiting to see implemented for a while. Actually, it will become It will come into force in July this year, but it's already been published. And there are a few things to look out for in this already. Among them, we need to make sure that we know how government support is going to work for projects. While I think there is a reference to the Ministry of Finance actually approving or providing credit support, if this is not provided as a part of the project already that is being tendered, I think we have to review very carefully, as we always do, but review very carefully the documentation that is provided, and if adequate support isn't there, decide whether that's required. Projects these days in Saudi Arabia have developed without the need for, in some cases, this kind of support. Maybe just comfort letters have been made available, and Saudi Arabia has been successfully developing projects, even without this framework being in place. But this is one bankability aspect that will need to be reviewed in practice. Other parts of this law that need to be considered, and maybe everyone needs to be reminded of the competition aspect of the development of these projects. So Saudi Arabia now has this general authority for competition, and this will need to be taken into account unless there is an exemption in place. The bidders will need to consider whether the project development requires any form of filing in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere, but that's an aspect to be taken into account. There are certain aspects of the law also that might impact bankability, such as the ability to assign the contractual rights, the implementation of the share pledges. This probably requires maybe some clarifications, or some of the implementing regulations that might follow might clarify this aspect, but consent process might need to be put in place to make sure that the security that lenders in project finance are used to actually is available to them. So this is very briefly there are various guidelines, various aspects of how projects will be developed that this new law brings, and it's something that practically will need to be people will need to be familiar with it so that it's correctly implemented. So that's very briefly what the law does.
Well, thanks, Agnieszka. We have several questions from our viewers. If I could just one of the questions is addressed to Sarmad and Rajat. I think it's very pertinent because we never got into financing these large infrastructure projects. The question is focused towards. So I'll read out the question. The question is, Sarmad and Rajat, how can banks and developers facilitate the flow of funding into markets where financing is required in countries such as Iraq, Nigeria, Egypt? So I guess the question is, Abu Dhabi, Saudi, GCC is relatively easy to finance, but how do banks and developers facilitate projects in tougher jurisdictions?
Sarmad, do you want me to have a first crack? Or
Please go ahead, Rajat. Please go ahead,
okay.
And I'll contribute.
All right. So look, it's a good question, and it's a very fair and reasonable question. I would say it's important that in terms of the global economic development, there are some jurisdictions which are able to, because of what they have been able to establish, their inherent own macro situation, are able to accelerate the deployment. And there are some countries which are waiting in the wings, and they need this important trigger that will also get them at least into the same path, if not at the same pace of deployment of the energy transition. And the countries like Iraq and others, attracting capital, private capital is very important in order to get on with the whole acceleration of renewable deployment, embrace energy transition, and so on and so forth. For countries such as that, I think it is extremely important that we first work with the development banks, we work with the multilaterals, and we work with export credit agencies. Now, these are, of course, bilateral and multilateral agencies with deep pockets and with strong political wills, which can help not only in their own country's export, but can also contribute to the whole agenda of helping these countries to set up a regulatory framework and set up a transparent and competitive bidding process or a procurement process. And then over a period of time, after the first few projects, with the help of these multilaterals and bilaterals are established, the regulation develops itself, then we will slowly and steadily start seeing private capital come and basically crowd out the first layers of multilaterals, export credit agencies, and bilaterals that have sown the seeds in this country. So that's how I see the actions being taken step by step.
Great. Thanks a lot. Sorry, Sarma, the apologies. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. A lot more to discuss. Time is over. I'd like to give a big thanks to all the panelists. Thank you, Rajat, Sarma, Francois, Agnieszka. I'm sure next year, if we meet again at this time, we'll have a lot more to discuss, a lot more landmark transactions to discuss. So thank you very much to all the viewers and to all the panelists. Thanks.